Scrap engines imported from abroad. After a little processing, they can earn more than $10,000 a day. How they can really turn waste into treasure? The answer is hidden in Pakistan. This repair store in Karachi, the owner of the car has a badly damaged engine. No longer wanted to repair it. So he came here and spent 66,000 rupees to get a new one for his old one. Although there is no clean room here. But before assembling the car, the technicians will use gasoline to clean the parts to be cleaned to make it spotless, because they don't have special bracket for engine repair. So we can only use 4 bolts screwed on the plane of the block to support the block to facilitate the subsequent installation work. After supporting the engine, start to install the crankshaft shim. Before installing the shims, the master has already installed the new cylinder liner back and already honed. After the crankshaft shim is installed, you can install the crankshaft back in order to avoid strain during the assembly process. Crankshaft rotation strain. The master also needs to apply some oil before installation. Let it play the role of lubrication. After the crankshaft is installed, you can put the cover back in order and according to a certain torque. Tighten it in the middle first and then both sides. Then install the flywheel housing. In order to prevent oil leakage, you need to apply sealant to the joint. Apply sealant evenly, then install it. To speed up the process, the technicians started to divide the work. Installing the camshaft. Before the camshaft is installed, also need to apply some oil to prevent strain when rotating. After the camshaft and diesel pump are installed, the next step is to align the timing. After the timing gears are aligned, installing the oil filter base. On the other side, the master started to put the new piston and the new piston pin back to the connecting rod. This installation is also relatively simple. Generally, the pistons with honed steel sleeves are matched. Just put the corresponding piston on the corresponding connecting rod. Just don't mess it up. After installing all the pistons on the connecting rod, install the piston ring. Master first install the oil ring, then install 2 more rings. Stagger them 120 degrees from each other. The piston rings are installed. Then install the shingles back. Then the piston can be installed back into the cylinder. Before installing the piston, you also need to put some oil on it to increase the lubrication. Then use the piston ring compressor to tighten the piston ring and then slowly knock the piston back to its original position. Another master is installing the connecting rod cover at the back. Install the piston. After finishing, use the tool to rotate the crankshaft first. Check whether they can run properly. After checking if there is no problem, install the diesel high pressure pump. This kind of oil pump installation also needs skills. If the installation tilt is not correct, there will be black smoke from the exhaust, insufficient power and other phenomena. After the high pressure pump is installed, then install the oil pan root timing gear cover back. These parts should be gasket before installation and apply sealant. This gasket is included in the overhaul kit. Next, we install the water pump, oil pump, flywheel and other accessories back. Then you can install the cylinder head. Before installing the cylinder head, apply an even layer of cylinder flat adhesive first. Put the cylinder gasket on it. Then you can install the cylinder head. This cylinder head is also repaired. The valve and valve oil seal on it are new. Valve guides and other parts are new. After installing the cylinder head, then install the valve top rod and valve rocker arm. Then install the exhaust pipe, flywheel bearing intake pipe and other accessories. Then install the clutch and pressure plate. The installation of the clutch is also very skillful. You need to take an input shaft into the spline hole of the clutch plate. Let the clutch plate align with the position before tightening the pressure plate. If the clutch plate is not in the right position, the transmission will not be installed. After the clutch is installed, now the whole engine is assembled. It's no different from a new one. For Pakistan, there is no such thing as waste, only useless waste. The next step is to use the crane. The engine is lifted back onto the truck. After fixing the engine, install the fuel injector and high pressure oil pipe and other components back. Then adjust the valve with a dipstick and then rotate the crankshaft 360 degrees. Valve clearance adjustment is complete. Then transmissions imported from abroad at low prices, slightly repaired and then resold. How did this repair store in Pakistan do it? This is a ZF gearbox of a Hino truck. Now the master is disassembling it. Its internal structure is very complicated. The master took out the bolts of the subbox. Then he pried it out with a screwdriver. After the master disassembled the subbox, the surface of the planetary gear looks fine. The boss was also instantly relieved. Now there is only the gear inside the main box left to see. If there is no major problem inside the main box, the repair will not be too troublesome. The master proceeded to disassemble the gearshift mechanism assembly. Then he took out the bolts of the gearbox main case, then the idler shaft, the differential cylinder and other parts were removed. The two masters worked together to pry out the main case. No need to heat the locating pin. It is easy to take out the main case. The gears do not look obviously damaged now, but just to be sure, still need to take it apart one by one to check, because there is no bearing puller here, so they dismantle the bearings by prying. The synchronizer ring is removed. The master will carefully check whether the upper wear, and then proceed to. Then the gearshift fork. The main shaft and subshaft are removed from the main box, and then pull the remaining gears out of the main shaft. One gear is already broken by a few teeth. Just replace it. Not a big problem. After the gears are removed from the spindle, the master used diesel fuel, cleaned all the parts. The master has already taken the second gear vertebrae. The second gear synchronizer and the first and second gear seat are installed. Now install the 1 to 2 gear slide sleeve, and press the 3 sets of springs and push blocks into the 1 to 2 gear holder. Then install the first gear synchronizer ring. The position of the synchronizer ring projection. You also need to align the grooves of the springs and push blocks. The remaining gears are installed back like this. So how do they shift? The gears on the output shaft all have a synchronous tapered ruler structure, because when shifting, output shaft and output gear speed are different. It is difficult to lock. It is necessary to use this synchronizing ring to help the output gear and output shaft to get the same speed. The synchronizer ring can also rotate with this gear holder at the same speed as the seat. When this fork is pushed, the slip ring presses the synchronizer ring against the taper of the output gear, so that the output gear and the synchronizer ring reach the same speed, so that the output gear is locked to the output shaft smoothly and firmly. To achieve the effect of shifting gears, the master has finished assembling. This is a truck starter rotor, because the insulation capacity has been reduced, can no longer work properly. If in our area can only be sold as scrap metal, but in Pakistan, only 2,000 rupees to restore it to new condition. After removing the commutator, now the rotor coil is removed. You can see that the surface of the copper strip is very corroded. After disassembling the rotor, then use the gun to heat it for annealing treatment. At the same time, to remove all the impurities on it. After finishing, the master is using dilute sulfuric acid solution. The copper oxide inside the copper bar table dissolved all the reaction. This reaction is very fast. In just a few seconds, has become shiny as new. Next, master then used the polisher to polish the copper bar pins. Because of the reaction with oxygen, copper strip pins will generate a layer of oxide film on the surface, so we need to polish it off. After the copper bar pin is polished, take the rotor to the lathe. Use sandpaper to clean the rust on the silicon steel piece. After grinding, install new insulators. All these insulators are made by the masters themselves. Another master is cutting insulation paper. How well the insulation is done during refurbishment is also a measure of the master's skill. The key point to measure the master's skill or not, on the silicon steel sheet of the rotor, in each groove where the copper strip is placed, is inserted into a piece of insulation paper. The long part can be cut off. Then you can insert the refurbished copper strip back into the groove of the rotor. Before installation, the master first straightened each copper strip. The insertion of copper strips is still very simple. Just insert them into the groove in order to prevent short circuit between the copper strips. Also adjust the distance between them. Also to ensure that the part of the copper strip exposed outside the slot will not be easily contacted. The master used another kind of insulating paper. Cut a longer strip of paper, and then put the paper strip through the gap between them. This way, the top and bottom layers of copper strips perfectly isolated. After the insulating paper was placed, you can slowly press these copper strips back in. After pressing in half, then use a hammer to gently tap to adjust the position. To ensure the later use of the effect, copper assembly must be installed in place. In order to ensure that nothing is wrong, before the commutator was installed, did the pathway test in advance? After checking that there are no problems, use pliers to trim the pins of all copper strips. The principle of trimming must be better with commutator installation. Also keep the pin direction balance. No shorting phenomenon. The pins of the 2 layers of copper strips must be at the same angle to both sides. Master then polished the commutator side. Trim the line groove. Then you can put the commutator along the center axis into the, after adjusting the position, then the pins of these copper bars all into the solder slot on the commutator. The angle of the copper strip pins is also well controlled. Installation is also relatively simple. To facilitate the placement placement of insulating paper. Before placing the second layer of pins, you can first put the insulation paper in place, then tap the second layer of pins back into the solder slot of the silver angle. Also be sure to smash as hard as possible. The starter's working condition is rather harsh, and vibration is very high. Smash tighter for a while will be more securely soldered. Otherwise, in the process of future use, it is very easy to open the weld. Before welding, master also need to conduct a performance test because there is no electric soldering iron. Master can only use a piece of iron heating as a soldering iron welding. From the final result of welding, solder joints are still quite reliable. After the welding is completed, you still need to take it to the lathe side, sandpaper again, because the welding may cause the joint to stick, affect the normal operation of the commutator. After the sanding is finished, master then take a small knife, trim the gap. In order to prevent the copper bar from welding and displacement, the copper strip was tied with nylon rope. Finally, the rotor is coated with insulator on both ends. This will not only improve the insulation of the rotor, it can also ensure the integrity of each part of the assembly, waterproof and moisture-proof, but also shock-proof. Brake pads that were originally obsolete. After a little processing, they can be sold again. How do they really turn waste into treasure? The answer is hidden in Pakistan. This workshop in Karachi, because these recycled brake shoes, there's still a little bit of friction on them, so the master needs to use fire to heat, so that the friction pads come out under the burning heat. The operation is also very simple. You just need to mix the brake shoes with wooden blocks, then pour a little gasoline on top, and then burn them for 2 hours. The whole process is done without any ingredients. After 2 hours, it's all done. Now the master just needs to use the brake shoes, gently knocking them together. The friction pads fall out easily. Now the brake pads look rusty. The master will then remove the rust from these brake pads. This is the rust removal method using hydrochloric acid. The master will put the gates into the bucket of hydrochloric acid in turn. You can see that the chemical reaction is quite strong. Just putting the gates into the barrel, white smoke is coming out. After putting all the gates in, cover the lid. Let them soak in the hydrochloric acid water for half an hour. After soaking for half an hour, now these gates reveal its original metal appearance. Now the master has to give them a shampooing to filter out the residual hydrochloric acid from the gates. After repeated washing, the gates have been cleaned thoroughly. Then, the clean gates are taken. Take them to the sun to dry, to strengthen the gate. After the miscellaneous pieces are dried, the master also needs to put them into the shot blasting machine for processing. Remove the surface contamination by small steel balls to achieve a uniform roughness on the surface of the gates. Increase the adhesion of the surface profile of the coating to strengthen the gate. After the process is completed, the gate is no different from the new one, but in order to prevent the gate from rusting, the master also needs to apply a layer of rust inhibitor to it to extend its service life. The next step is to glue them. The master first applied glue to the friction plate evenly. Then the friction plate is attached to the gate plate. Use the special top bar in the middle. Adjust the position and put a tin frame. Then adjust the bolt on the top bar. Let it support outward. Make the friction plate and the gate firmly stick together to make them stronger. The master also needs to put them into the oven. Heat the inside of the oven to 180 degrees. Bake for 3 hours to let them cure and set to improve its braking power. After the curing is finished, the surface of the friction plate needs to be polished to make the surface rough. Then the brake shoes are coated, so the new brake shoes are finished. Do you dare to use such brake shoes? Leave your answers in the comments. Half shaft was originally welded because the owner frequently overload, now disconnected again. Now the master got the disconnected drive shaft and start to get to the lathe side to it for processing. People who often repair should know this master. His skills are very good, multi-talented, whether it's welding or lathe. He's good at everything. If he had welded this drive shaft last time, it might not have been broken. Now after the master fixed the drive shaft, start to use the needle plate to find the right position. Only teachers dare to do so, because this operation is more difficult than the percentage table. So this is really the conditions are not enough technology to make up. After the half shaft is fixed, start turning. The master plans to turn the bevel first. This turning tool looks incredibly sharp. It's like cutting iron like mud. The whole turning process looks very decompression. After the master turned the section into a cone, you can remove it first, then the flange is being repaired. Now, He took the flange to the front of the table and fixed it. Then he uses the grinder to polish the section. In the process of grinding, it is obvious that there are sand holes in the original welding area. No wonder the half shaft is broken. After the master polished the section smoothly, then he took it to the lathe and fixed it. Also used the scribe plate to find the correct position. This step is very critical. If it's a little bit off, welding out will not be centered. So now even experienced masters at this moment also need to pay special attention. Check the jumping situation carefully and correct it back to the exact position. Patience is the key to being a turner. Slow work makes fine work. After the flange is corrected, the master starts to use the drill bit to make a positioning hole. Preventing deflection when welding later. After the center hole is made, fix it with a thimble. Then start beveling. This lathe is still a bit common. It still uses a dead thimble, but relatively speaking, it was better in the 80s and 90s. In the 80s and 90s, some places did not have lathes. They were chiseled flat with an angle ruler. The welded half shaft is as durable. As long as the vehicle is not seriously overloaded, can be used for a long time. And welding it cheap. After the bevel is turned out, it is ready for welding. The master is now using 506 welding rod. The original welding for the first time with a 422 welding rod. Strength is not so good. Welding this must be 506 or more welding rod. Will not be easy to break. To break is also broken in other places. And welding this is also very skillful. He needs to be divided into 5 turns to weld. Each welding circle should stop to knock the welding slag. After the welding is completed, the master first use a hammer to knock off the welding fry and then start the lathe. Turn off the excess weld scars. Check whether there are air holes or cracks in the welded joints. After checking it is okay, then use the grinder to polish it. Make it more flat, convenient for subsequent installation. After the grinding is completed, the job is done. Now the whole half shaft is as good as new. It looks very sturdy. Master promise. Within 3 months or the weld point is broken will be guaranteed. Really conscientious business. Transmission input shaft is overloaded, has broken into 2 sections, but the Pakistani master said it can still be repaired and can restore it as new. It is well known in Pakistan repair. It is almost inseparable from welding and lathe. Now the master first put the broken spline shaft part, put it on the lathe kernel just right. The master's operation looks very casual, not even use any measuring tools. Let ordinary people think it is very simple. In fact, he is not as simple as we think. Those who can think it is simple, because this almost need to achieve zero jump to ensure its concentricity. Otherwise, the weld cannot be used. So in the process of operation cannot be careless. Now the master first used the outer circle cutter to flatten the cross-sectional turning pin. After flattening the cross-sectional pins, and then use an 8 mm drill bit. In the center of the spline shaft, make a negative step of 2 cm deep. The master plans to use a center pin later to connect them together to make it more solid, to ensure the concentricity of the center hole. In the process of drilling the hole, the master also needs to move the turning tool to the side of the drill to check the runout of the drill bit to make it stronger when welding. After drilling the holes, you also need to use the external round cutter to cut out a breakout. After turning the pin at the spline end. Next, turn the pin gear end. This end is also done in the same way. Turn the pin section first, then punch the hole, then break the mouth. In order to prevent the arrow from jumping around, master also need to use the thimble to fix it, to ensure the accuracy of the size of the workpiece. After the bevel turning pin is finished, start making the center pin. In order to save cost, the master chose a discarded bolt to make. The master first used the external round cutter. Turn the threads on the bolt to make the pin flat. In the process of turning the pin, master also need to use calipers to constantly measure, to ensure its accuracy as far as possible to achieve zero error. After the pin is flattened, he will switch to the cutting tool. Cut it off according to a certain ratio. Then the center pin will be installed back and put them together. Then it is ready for welding. Before welding, you also need to open the lathe. Let them rotate. Check if they are concentric. After confirming that there is no error, you can proceed to welding. After the welding is completed, then use a round cutter to smooth out the excess weld scars. Make it look more beautiful. After the weld scar is flattened, you also need to polish it with sandpaper. The input shaft of the transmission is repaired. Because of long periods of not changing the oil, causes the engine to pull a cylinder, causing serious damage to the parts inside. Heard that Pakistan can repair. The owner came here with the intention of giving it a try. First, The master fixed the piston on the vise. He intended to weld the gap first. Before welding, the master preheated it first. The purpose of preheating is to reduce the welding stress, to reduce the temperature difference in the welding area. Once the preheating is complete, the weld can be filled. The master fills the gap in just a few moments. The next step is to turn it. The master first fixes the piston to the jaws, then he aligns it. Once the alignment is complete, the piston is turned. The master first turns the protruding weld scar to smooth it out. This is done over several rounds, until the weld scars are smoothed out, because the position of the filler weld is blocking the ring groove. So after the weld scar has been smoothed out, the groove needs to be cut with a groove cutter, to ensure the accuracy of the ring groove. Before the groove is cut, the groove cutter will be polished, and then the groove is cut. The gap between the grooves must not be too large or too small. Once the piston ring is installed, if the side clearance is too large, the seal of the piston ring will be weakened. The side clearance is too small, the piston ring may become stuck in the ring groove, resulting in a pulled cylinder, for a better overall appearance. So after the ring groove has been cut, the entire outer circle of the piston is then turned. After turning the outer circle of the piston, which had been dull and drab, now looks brand new. Then the master brings sandpaper to polish it. I don't know how long the repaired piston will last, but in such poor conditions, the piston was restored to this level. It's not bad at all. Kudos to the porting discarded ship anchors from China. With a little processing, they can earn more than $10,000 a day. How do they turn waste into treasure? The answer is hidden in a hand-cast workshop in Pakistan. This pile of rusty metal in front of you. The pile of rusty metal in front of us is ship's anchor chain imported from China at a low price. They were used on huge cargo ships. The quality is very good, even after they were scrapped. But it's still an excellent material for forging machine parts for Pakistan. In order to save raw materials, the workers first marked them with chalk. Then they cut it in half with a cutting torch. The curved iron ring is then placed in a casting furnace. The melting point of iron is 1,538 degrees. This part only needs to be heated to about 900 degrees. The worker will then remove it with a pair of pliers. Place it under the air hammer. Experienced blacksmiths work with the machine to straighten the bent anchor chain, the black material that keeps falling off during the forging process. It is the iron formed after the iron oxidation. After about 10 minutes of forging, the anchor chain has completely changed its shape. The next forging process requires the cooperation of 3 blacksmiths. Also used are jigs of different sizes. After this process, the originally bent iron bar becomes straight. It becomes a real blank. The half shaft is placed on the ground to cool naturally. After 10 minutes, the next process can be carried out. The worker increases the heat to partially heat the rough. This increases the toughness of the half shaft. The discs used are the key molds for making the half shafts. The forging must be done very carefully. The splashes of iron can burn your arm if you are not careful. After the half shaft is formed, marked with the logo, this is not only a symbol of glory, it is the most effective anti-counterfeiting mark. Experienced quality inspectors step on the half shaft and turn around. One hammer down. Declare the quality inspection passed. The cooled parts are placed on the milling lathe. In just a few minutes, the master can easily complete this process by experience and hand feeling. Next, he will use a ruler to measure the size of the half shaft to be machined. Just look at the cutting tool. It is a long process. After cutting the semi-finished product, he will check the bending level one by one. By turning the half shaft, the worker can easily find the location where the flatness is not in line, because there is no machine to measure, so we can only draw a mark on the half shaft. Afterwards, the presses are used to fix them with experience. Next comes the final drilling process. The worker takes the polished half-shaft disc to another machine to drill the holes. To prevent the holes from shifting, he will also use nuts to fix it. When all the holes have been drilled, a brand new truck half-shaft is completely finished. Do you dare to use such handmade already scrapped excavator? I never thought that in Pakistan, but it has a second spring. This excavator has reached the end of its life. It should not be used on the road, but it was a pity to throw it away. So the owner sold the excavator. Sold to Pakistan for $1,000. There is no such thing as scrapping in Pakistan. The next step was to give it a simple maintenance. Then it was used again. The first step was to remove the wheels. Here is to replace the brake pads. Due to the limited conditions, we can only use our hands to unscrew the screws. screws. Then use a screwdriver to pry open the wheel housing. Once the shell is opened, the oil flowed out. Wait until the brake fluid flows out. Then take out the shell. Then we started to disassemble below. The master first used pliers to pry open the lock ring inside, and then pull out the steel ring inside. There are a lot of parts inside the wheel. The master then sprayed some lubricant inside, then wiped the surface with a cloth to clean the oil. Then he took out the rings in turn. After the rims are removed, then use a screwdriver to pry the brake hub out. After the brake hub is in place, the next step is to disassemble the brake disc. The master first knocked it out with a hammer until it loosens. After loosening, then pull out the steel ring from the top, and then continue to knock on the brake disc until it is removed. After the brake disc is removed, there are still a lot of steel ring parts on the suspension. The master first took out the outermost ring, then used the hammer and pry bar to knock out the inner rings in turn. After the steel ring is taken out, then use a rag to wipe the oil on the top to clean. Because the rings are good, there is no damage, so you can continue to use. Next, let's disassemble the suspension housing. Our master used a hammer and a wrench to disassemble it, because the screws of this excavator has not been moved for many years, so it will be very difficult to disassemble. After the suspension is removed, the next step is to clean the dismantled parts. The master first used a rag to dry the oil on the surface of the brake disc. Then he sprinkled water on the reverse side of the disc. Then he wiped it dry with a cloth. After drying, the brake disc is as good as new. Next, clean the other parts. In fact, these parts are not damaged in any way. You only need to wipe the oil on the surface. After the parts are wiped, the next step is to disassemble the steering shaft inside the suspension. This steering shaft has not been disassembled for 20 years, so it is already covered with oil and dirt. In a short time, our master cleaned the ports of the suspension. Then the master took out the air gun, and then blow the dust on the port to clean. After blowing dry, and then wipe the surface with a cloth to clean it. After our master cleaned all the parts, next is to install it back. The first step is to install the suspension shell. This step requires two people to work together, and then set it firmly. Then put the spacer on it. Then one person will hold it steady. One person will tighten the screws. After the spacer is tightened, two people then continue to tighten the other screws together. After the suspension is installed, the next step is to install the brake discs. The master first put the brake discs on the top of the suspension, and then spray some oil on it to make it more lubricated. After the oil spraying, and then the steel ring to install back. After the rings are set, you also need to use a hammer to hammer it tight. Tighten it and then turn it a few times, and give it a sprinkle of oil to make it more slippery. After the brake disc is installed, then continue to install the brake drum. This drum is also put together first, and then blow the dust off the surface with an air gun. There are also many steel rings outside the brake drum. You also need to install them all back together. This brake drum has a lot of rings inside. There are more than a dozen of them. These teachers don't even need to put the parts in order, because which ring corresponds to which position. They are all engraved in their brains. After all the rims inside the brake drum are installed, the last thing is to put the hub back on. The master has to sprinkle some oil inside the hub first. The purpose of sprinkling oil is to play the role of rust prevention. Also let it inside the gear more lubricated some. After wiping with a cloth, can be installed on the suspension system. There are 8 screws on it. To align them one by one. Once aligned, then push them hard inside until they close. After they are closed, they will be twisted on the screws. This is actually the last step. After the screws are tightened, the repair of this scrap Do you know how skilled the tire patching is in Pakistan? The master takes a wrench to remove the screws of the patch, ready to repair again. Although this tire has been shipped for 6 years, has been sent away in 2 waves one after another. We can see that the last patching process is still very solid. There were 6 large screws, not to mention sealing a piece of rubber. It is enough to seal a high-pressure pump, so the guys do not question whether the process of Bart is solid. Workers began to check the wound. Break open the rubber skin by hand. Take a knife to remove a little bit of necrotic flesh. This wound has hurt the dermis layer. Even the nylon cord curtain is exposed. After packing up, use the rubber skin to look at the wound, then prepare to make a band-aid. At the same time, the master took the sanding machine to start cleaning the wound. The sanding marks can be seen. The surface layer of this tire has been slightly carbonized. After sanding the outside, you can see that the wound is not small, can fit 3 fingers. Then, In the same way, take a rubber pen and draw an area. Then use the grinding wheel to continue sanding. The main purpose of this sanding is to clean up the residue of the wound, to make the repair of rubber adhesion more firmly. After sanding the tire, the master then started to trim the rubber skin to fill such a large hole. Also need to complete a few pieces of rubber with curtain layer. Otherwise, it can't carry the tire pressure. This rubber skin is generally cut from the tread of car tires. Not only is it soft and strong, it is also very malleable. Now the master will use 2 strands of nylon thread to sew up the wound. After stitching, the master will take the secret glue to paint the inside and outside of the wound. Leave it to dry. At the same time, he will also apply glue to the rubber skin that has been trimmed and glued it to the film repeatedly with a roller to keep the film and rubber skin close together. Also, many long, thin strips of glue are cut out. They are flexible enough to adhere to small wounds. The repair begins. First, tear dozens of strips of tape to seal the wound. Take the roller to repeatedly press and compact. After a layer of paste, and then stick a layer of rubber with nylon rope. Then continue to paste a layer of film. After a layer of film, there is another layer. Then stick a large band-aid inside paste finished. At this time, the master will use the nylon rope to sew the inside of the band-aid. Take the glue and paint the inside and outside clean, and start to fill the holes from the outside with adhesive strips. Start with the screw holes, then plug the holes of the stitching line. Also a layer of sticky finish and then a layer. Sticky outside. Continue to use large rubber stickers to stick on. Take the roller to compact. Finally, finish with a piece of cold paste. Push the tire onto the table. Use sandbags and wood to compact the inside, and take the jack from above to transfer the pressure down. Heated by fire from underneath the table. Although the performance parameters are not up to the standard factory curing equipment, but this process can also promote the fusion of old and new rubber. The master will also use a red-hot iron for surface treatment while ironing out the burrs. The original tread pattern will also be trimmed. See here. You guys think such a solid tire repair technology? Can you feel safe on the road? Those who sold the scrap tires have gone where? After reading this, you will not change the retreaded tires again. The little boy took out a glossy tire. He wanted the craftsman to show the Bart craftsmanship. Let the world see a scrap tire with flat skid marks in half an hour into a brand new tire. First, the craftsman used a 0.5 centimeters wide concave file. Looking at the original gutter marks, a groove of the same depth is filed out. No matter how worn the tire is, how much crown thickness is left. Drainage grooves open as usual. After all, it is not professional not to open. Does not meet international standards. Older drivers who have driven a car know. Each tire usually has 3 to 4 drains. The master's skill is still very good. You know the file is so sharp. If you run out of position, will not be stabbed into their own stomach. This direct filing of the tire pattern way is nakedly reduce the safety performance of the tire. Far more conscientious than the practice of gluing a new tire crown. After filing, 3 drainage groove consistency is very high. Switch to the horizontal pattern is another file. Not to mention, the craftsman's each cut and each groove. The depth and spacing are just right. The pattern of the tire is very similar to the one that just left the factory. Even the tire line on top is perfectly copied. You know that before this. The tire was so worn that you couldn't even see the drainage grooves. After 20 minutes of tire pattern restoration, it almost looks like a new tire. Then the craftsman would apply soap with a brush. The surface of the tire is deep cleaned. Each groove is brushed and cleaned. In this process, the craftsman will wash the tire 3 times in a row. When it is clean, then the plastic tape is wrapped around the tire. The logo and barcode label are applied according to the packaging specifications of the new tires. And that's it. A retreaded tire is reborn. If you have this kind of tire under your butt, can you feel safe? Self-built floor heating house in the old countryside. No coal burning and no electricity. Warm and save money. Only a few pieces of firewood are needed for heating a day, even if it's cold outside. But inside the house is as warm as spring. Today we will share the construction process with you. First, dig a large hole in the yard. Lay a layer of cement mortar in the bottom corner. First, use stones and bricks to build a good location for the firewood. Build 3 layers of bricks at the entrance. Put a stone slab to reserve the firewood entrance. The next step is to build the furnace body. Instead of cement mortar, mix sand and loam together. This way, The furnace will be stronger and stronger as it is built. It will not be easy to crack. After the furnace body is built, a layer of cement mortar is applied to the floor. Next is the construction of the chimney. This pit is connected to the furnace body. Build it as a return air hole structure so that the smoke can be extracted from the furnace. The smoke will be extracted from the furnace. It also increases the heating effect of the fire inside the house. Use bricks to create a hollow partition. The slabs are laid on top of the stove. Create a heating chamber underneath. Fill the gap with loam. Keep it sealed. Prevent smoke from seeping out. Fix the smoke pipe in place of the smoke vent. Light firewood in the stove. Due to the unique internal structure, fire quickly burned up. You can see that the fire is very strong, and the smoke is also relatively small. In a short time, the stone slab on the stove became hot. Next, build a house frame with wood on top of the stove body. Use bricks to seal the edges of the house. Let the heat be more concentrated. Lay a layer of fine sand inside the house to insulate it. Smooth it out with a wooden board. Then continue to lay a layer of yellow mud on top. Yellow clay is slower to dissipate heat, so it insulates longer. If you use cement, it won't take long. Fixing the partitions to the wooden frame of the house. To make it more beautiful, paint them with self-white paint. Install the windows. Lay a layer of paper on the floor of the house first, then lay the fire mat on it. The purpose of this mat is mainly fireproof and heat insulation. To avoid high temperature burns, fill the wooden lattice of the house with yellow clay. This can provide better insulation, so that the heat in the room will not be lost so quickly. Dab a layer of waterproof paper on the walls and roof. Putting iron doors on the house. Here a heated house is built. Although the process is rather tedious, but the heating effect is better than air conditioning. In winter, even if it's cold outside, but the house is still as warm as spring. What do you think? Welcome to discuss plastic basket at home. A simple and convenient wood-burning stove can be made. Not only is it small and easy to use, and the fire is super strong. Let's see how it works. First, prepare a plastic basket and 6 cans. Use tape to stick the plastic basket inside. Then place the cans in order. To fix the position, filled with sand and compacted. Then stick the foam tightly. The foam should be prepared in advance. The next step is to mix the cement mortar. Take out all the jars in the plastic basket after mixing. Pour the cement mortar into the jar model first. Then pour the cement mortar into the baskets one after another. Here we have to do it step by step in order to make the stove stronger. Also put some thick wire down. Then you can put the foam. The center line of the foam should be aligned with the center line of the basket. And then put 2 tin cans filled with sand. Put down to fix the position. Both left and right sides should be tightened. Steps should be taken step by step. Be careful not to forget here. Add a few pieces of broken bricks down. And then the square foam glued tightly. Here is the preparation for the smoke window. Then continue adding cement mortar. The last step is to put the round tube on the foam. Then the basket can be filled. Be careful here. The cement mortar is not completely dry yet. Take out the pipe and the can first. Draw a good line and use a knife to tilt and scratch. When completely dry, then you can separate the basket. Clean up the sand and foam. After clean up, a homewood stove will be shaped. Finally, the chimney is installed and ready to cook. Let's test it. The fire is strong enough. Cook 2 dishes at the same time is no problem. If you like this small wood-fired stove, welcome to like the kind of personality stove. Surprisingly, the use of discarded tires transformed into. The fire is strong and very fuel efficient. So the wood-burning stove made of tires. Tires do not burn? With curiosity, let's take a look how this amazing stove is made. First, prepare the old discarded tires. Cut it out, and then open a square mouth on one side. Use it as a stove opening. Then set up the bricks on the floor. Put a piece of foam and an iron frame. Then put the tires down. After completion, mix the cement mortar. Spread evenly on it and smooth it out. Then install the 4 wheels in turn. Wait for drying. Then you can take out the foam inside. Next, after filling with cement mortar in the inside of the brick, be careful to reserve the position of the stove first. Fill the gaps between the bricks with cement mortar. After the completion of clean up a little, then prepare the clay. Add some cement and rice hulls. Mix it all together and paste it inside the stove. This can not only play a role in heat insulation, it can also make the inside of the wood stove more solid. And don't worry about the firewood heat causes the inside to break. Don't forget to put an iron frame on top as a steel support. When finished, cover it all with the clay mixture. Then fix the whole shape. After the shape of the stove cover, place down. Draw a circle line to mark, and then evenly wipe off a small layer with the lid to balance each other. After drying, so a unique tire wood stove is complete. Let's have a look. Small size and easy to move. And then light the fire to try a stir fry. The fire is strong and very fuel efficient. Can also be placed on the grill. Used for barbecue is simply too good. If you like it, Welcome to Like. It's incredible. Little brother's rocket stove built from bricks. Not only does it burn twice, it burns well and has a very strong flame. It's incredibly easy to make. Let's take a look how he built it. First, lay the foundation of the stove with bricks. Mix sand and cement in a ratio of 3:1. Mix with water. Start building the frame of the stove upwards. At this level you need to leave a hole on the right side. A 7 centimeters wide hole for the hollowing out of the cooker. When building the second layer of bricks, place 2 reinforcement bars in this position as a support and a 13 centimeters long, 6 centimeters high to connect the left and right side gaps. A sloping track is then constructed in the left-hand cavity. The next step is to use a combination of bricks and reinforcing steel. The combustion chamber of the rocket stove is divided from the fuel chamber. As the firewood burns in the chamber, the air expands and becomes lighter and moves upwards, and a vacuum is created underneath the chamber. This gives the firewood a blowing force. This will make the wood burn more and more. The only way to know if it works is to try it. Let's test the fire to see how it works, shall we? Adding firewood to the fuel chamber and lighting it up. As you can see, once lit, the flame is very strong, far more than a typical wood-burning stove. As the temperature rises, as the smoke rises to the top, small venting gap between cooker and hob, the resulting airflow can slow down. Compression pressure becomes higher, and the compression increases the density of combustion, further increasing the temperature, and the efficiency will increase as well. In addition, while boiling water and cooking, you can also use the residue from the combustion process for secondary use and for barbecuing. Never guessed that one guy, since he used 2 discarded plastic buckets, he was able to create a very functional wood-burning stove, and the fire is quite powerful. You can cook and stir-fry with no problem. Here's how to make it. First, get a plastic bucket. Pour in some used motor oil. Use a brush to apply the oil to the whole bucket. The purpose of this is to make a better release. Then put the pre-mixed cement mortar into the bucket to save the cement mortar. Then add a few bricks. It is also to get a better solidification. Next, we put in a long strip of foam. This foam is used for ventilation. It can also be used to remove the wood waste. Next, add a round piece of foam. Fill with cement mortar. To make it stronger, place an iron ring on top of the cement mortar. Then place a few centimeters of rebar placed on top of the round foam. These are used to make the combustion chamber. After the cement has been laid, take a piece of foam with a curved shape. Place it on the edge of the barrel. This is the foam for the fire inlet. Next, take a smaller bucket, put it in the middle to act as a burning ember to prevent the bucket from loosening up. Let's add 3 bricks inside the bucket for gravity. Then we fill it with cement mortar. Fill it to the right height. Then we stuff the back of the bucket with a small round piece of foam to act as a smoke vent. Continue with the cement mortar. This way a complete wood-burning stove shape is ready. After 2 hours, you need to take out the small bucket inside. Once removed, use a lid to make a circle around the spit. Remove the excess mortar. Then use the lid to create a slope. Wait until the mortar has set. Turn the plastic bucket over and scald the outside of the bucket with boiling water. Then remove the plastic bucket with both hands. Then use a tool to remove the foam inside. After the foam has been removed, install the chimney. The whole wood-burning stove is now ready. Now it's time to test. First, bring in the firewood. Put the firewood inside the stove and light it up. You can see that the fire is quite strong. Then you put the iron pot on top of the stove. It is very practical for stir-frying and cooking. If you like it, you can like it and bookmark it. You can try it yourself. See you next time with a different creative video. You believe it? Put a few sticks of firewood in this used oil drum. It's hot enough to take off your coat in half an hour. With this, the whole house is warm. You'll never be cold again this winter. Today, I'll share the process of making this heater to share with you. First, take a broken oil drum, cut off the top of the lid, evenly arrange the cut rebar inside, weld the rebar into an ashtray, place it in the oil drum, cut 3 angle irons at an angle and weld them together to form a triangle. Attach a screw to each corner, screw in the screws, make a liftable base. On the 3 corners of the base, weld a short piece of steel to each corner. This way the drum will not move back and forth. Mark a steel plate, cut out a disc, weld 3 angle irons, weld them to the lid of the drum you cut out earlier. Make it look like this. Weld the lid to the disc you have just cut out. Once welded together, the lid will be sealed. Weld the 2 finished handles to the lid for easy movement later on. Take the air inlet pipe and mark it on the oil drum. Cut out a round hole. The hole should be slightly larger than the air inlet pipe. It should be just big enough to fit the air inlet tube. Weld it to the drum. Cut a curved piece of steel. Weld a curved piece of steel to the inside of the drum where the air inlet pipe will be. This will allow more air from the inlet pipe to the bottom of the barrel to encourage the wood to burn. Cut a thicker section of steel pipe into a curved shape. Mark the barrel to its size. Make a round hole at the marked spot. Weld the pipe to it. Make another air inlet hole. Allow air to enter through the upper part as well. Weld a screw to the pipe. Place a cutout piece of iron. Attach it to the air inlet pipe with a nut with a handle. The air intake can be adjusted by toggling the iron piece. Make a rectangular slit in the bottom of the drum. Weld the box onto it. Open the door of the box. From here you can pull out the ash from the drum. Make a rectangular opening in the middle of the drum. Weld the other box to the top. To make a firewood inlet. To make the oil drum stronger, weld a circle of cut iron to the mouth of the drum. This will make the drum more airtight and weight-bearing. Make a round hole on the other side of the barrel. Weld the pipe to the drum. Sand the inside smooth. Take the finished lid and place it on the drum. See if it fits. Next, weld the cut steel pipe around the barrel. This will make the heat more efficient. Better heating. The principle is similar to that of a radiator. The oil drum with the steel pipe is a bit heavy. It takes 2 people to put it on the base. It's already a bit cold outside. As you can see, the thermometer shows it's only a few degrees. Putting some firewood and flammable material into the barrel. Sprinkle some petrol and use the igniter to ignite. Wait for the flame to stabilize a little. Put the lid on the barrel. You can see that the lid is very well sealed. Open the air inlet door and the pipe door to adjust the fire level. In no time the temperature in the cooker reaches over 100 degrees Celsius. After an hour, the room temperature was almost 30 degrees. As you can see, the heating effect is very good. What do you think? Feel free to discuss in the comments section. If you like it, please like it and bookmark it. See you next time with our daily share of interesting used iron barrel. It's amazing how much use it can be put to. It was only at the end that I understood why cut up a perfectly good oil drum. First, cut the drum in half. Mark the bottom with a round tube. Cut it off with a cutter. The top is also marked with a round tube. Cut it down. Next, weld a square frame from square tubing. Place it on the bottom of the barrel. Place a pulley on the 4 corners of the frame. Attach them to the bottom of the barrel. This allows the drum to be moved easily. Then, on either side of the drum, weld in 2 handles. Then cut a 35 centimeters long, 7.5 centimeters wide round tube. Drill a counterbore 3 centimeters from the bottom. Put a steel bar through it. Weld a piece of iron on top. This allows you to control the size of the air intake. Next, pour cement mortar into the bottom of the barrel. Insert a horizontal and vertical wire mesh in the middle. This will make the cement stronger once it has set. Next, put the round tube through the bottom. Place the cutout foam board in the middle. Place some red bricks around it. Pour in some cement mortar, just enough to submerge the pipe. Smooth out the surface with a spatula. Then cut off the bottom half of the oil drum. Then cut off a 30 centimeters width. Press them together firmly. Screw in place at the intersection, on the outer rim, where the cut is symmetrical. Make the same cut. Look at the details of the guy's work. Once you've done this, put it in the barrel. Then insert the barrel. Pour cement mortar between the inner and outer walls. Once all the cement has set, remove the foam. Measure out the distance from the bottom to the top. Then, depending on the size of the round hole in the middle, weld a rebar cage. The purpose of this is to sift out the firewood ash. After welding, mark the size on the lid. Use a cutter to cut off the sides and weld a handle on each side. Finally, place the welded cage in the middle. Put the lid on. Put the pot holder on. This is how the oil drum, the wood burning stove, is now complete. Add the dry wood and light the fire. We can see that the fire is very powerful. The bottom part of the fire can be controlled at will. Not only can you steam, you can also make teppanyaki on the iron plate. Isn't it incredible? So what do you think of this wood-burning stove made of iron barrels? What do you think of the wood-burning stove? If you like it, please like and bookmark it. Share more creative creations every day. This invention is truly amazing. With a waste basket, with a few modifications, to create a simple wood-burning stove. The quality is very durable and sturdy. Here's how he made it. First, the grid of the wastebasket is taped shut. Then pour in the cement mortar. While adding the cement, we need to turn the basket. Allow the mortar to adhere to the surface. Then leave it to dry. Next, prepare some fine sand and cement. Mix 1:1 and set aside. Place a few pieces of foam board inside the plastic frame. Fill them with the reserved cement mortar. Then place 5 bars of steel steel. Here is the ash outlet for the fireplace. Place the cylindrical sandbags into the plastic frame. This is the core of the stove. Stuff the side with foam blocks. Continue filling with cement mortar. A piece of wire mesh is then placed, adding more strength to the fireplace opening. Add the cement and smooth it out. Then use the plastic pot and the extra cement to make the base of the wood-burning stove. This is also known as the ashtray. Watch the video for details of how to do this. Once the mortar is completely dry, we can then remove the foam from the stove and the ashtray and the waste basket. Clean the surface. Finally, the iron frame is installed. A wood-burning stove is now ready. Let's cook some vegetables and see how it looks. As you can see, the fire is very powerful. If you like it, please like and follow. It's incredible. This man's skills are simply amazing. Using a discarded oil drum, a portable wood-burning stove. Not only can you cook, but you can also barbecue. It's so convenient. Today I'm going to share with you how he made it. First, use an angle grinder to cut a discarded oil drum. Cut it into this shape. Sand the edges with a tool. Then fit a custom-made bottom roller bracket. It is easy to push into the kitchen corner when not in use. Then the inside of the drum is plastered with cement mortar, smoothed with a tool. Immediately afterwards, place the red bricks inside. Fill until there are no gaps. Note that the red bricks above this layer need to be vertical. Build around the barrel. The master leaves a few iron rings between the gaps. Cut off the top cover. Then put in rebar and wire mesh to reinforce, to prevent cracking later. Finally, the cover is put on, compacted with red bricks. We reinforce the removed iron with tools. Then we apply yellow clay to it, to give it an insulating effect. Finally, we remove all the supports. The door of the wood-burning stove is now installed. We light the firewood and put it on the hearth. Let's see how it burns. As you can see, it burns very well, and there is no white smoke. After cooking, the charcoal is ready for grilling. If you like this design too, please like and follow it and bookmark it. Incredible. The portable heater in front of you is a super powerful fire. It's made from a scrap fire extinguisher. Don't look at its small size. The indoor heating effect is better than air conditioning. It's even more convenient for outdoor camping. Today, we will share the process of making it with you. First of all, clean the used fire extinguisher briefly. Remove the spout from the bottle. Pour off any dry powder left inside. Clean off the paint from the outside of the bottle with a sander. Mark the mouth of the bottle. Draw a square opening. Mark the bottle according to the hole in the flap. Make 4 small holes for fixing the flaps later. Then cut a square notch in the bottle along the marked line. Cut a square notch in the bottle. Smooth the cut surface with a file. Place the 4 cut pieces of iron. Attach them to the inside of the notch. The edge of the iron sheet is a little more than the notch. The seal will be better. Use a hole punch to make 4 holes in the bottle. Insert the screws into the holes. Attach 4 screws to the screws for the legs. Why use screws? This is because when camping outdoors, it can be dismantled quickly and easily carried. Next, mark the bottle to the size of the threaded pipe. Cut a round hole with a cutter. Weld the threaded pipe to the hole. Then attach a section of steel pipe to the threaded pipe. This will act as the connection for the pipe. Take the cutout section of the bottle. Make a wood door that opens and closes the air inlet hole. Attach it to the firewood opening with a live top. Attach a clip to the other side of the wood door. Paint the whole cooker with a heat-resistant paint. After the paint has dried completely, place a few pieces of firewood in the cooker. Use the igniter to start the fire. In no time, the fire will be getting stronger and stronger. Close the firewood door. Adjust the air inlet valve. The smoke is pumped through the pipe. The fire in the chamber is getting hotter and hotter. The whole body of the stove and the flue pipe are heated up. You don't have to look at it as small. The heating effect is very good. The room temperature can be raised to 26 degrees with just a few sticks of wood. It is also very convenient for outdoor camping. What do you think? Welcome to discuss in the comments section. If you like it, please like it. See you next time with our daily share of interest. It's incredible. With just 1 fruit tray, a simple portable fireplace, everything you need to cook and grill. It's a must-have for camping. Today I'll share the process with you. First, bring a folded fruit tray. Attach 3 screws to the bottom. Place the fruit tray on a stainless steel plate. Mark the disc according to the position of the screws. Use a hole punch to make 3 holes. Insert the screws into the holes. This will hold the fruit tray in place. Mark the bottom of the barrel according to the size of the disc. Make a hole slightly larger than the disc. Smooth out the cut surface. Next, on the other side of the barrel, use a hole punch to make a small circle of holes. Make an air intake hole to encourage the flame to burn. Putting all the components together, the cooker is now a complete unit. It's also very easy to take apart. You don't have to look at it small. You can put the barrel on and turn it into a hot plate. The key is that it's easy to store when you're done. What do you think? Welcome to discuss in the comments section. If you like it, please like and follow us. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Never thought firewood stove can also be made portable. Simple and elegant appearance. Powerful interior. Really is a good thing for outdoor camping. Necessary hands-on ability of small partners can try to make the next production tutorial to give you. First of all, a scrap of 10 centimeters diameter square pipe. Measure the length of a section of 25 centimeters and 40 centimeters. Draw a mark. Use an angle grinder to remove them separately. On the bottom 1.5 centimeters of the 40 centimeters section, draw a mark. Cut off the corresponding two sides. Then use the prepared rebar welded to the inside of the steel pipe. Grind out 2 traces. Remember not to break. Fold the sanded area 90 degrees. Find a piece of iron plate. Take off a piece of the same size as the bottom of the square tube. Weld on the chain for backup. Weld the other side with an iron rod so that the baffle will not be out of position. Next, draw a line down the middle of the short one. Use a thicker grinder to cut along the line, and then together to weld up. Do the same for the other side. This gives us a smaller diameter square tube. Cut a slant out of the smaller pipe. Take out 2 small pieces of iron and set them aside. Find the spot where the dust falls. Use a file to grind out 2 small holes. Put the small pieces of iron welded to the small square tube bevel position. This way the two will be stuck and will not fall off. Cut out the middle part. Let the space open up. Next is the fixed position of the bracket. Punch 3 holes in the corresponding positions. Weld the nut inside. Tighten the screw. Weld the bracket well so that it will not be deformed. Add a movable cover to the entrance. Fix the Lorry spring. Finally welded with a chain. A carrying bag. Thus a portable fireplace is completed. Let's go to the field to see how effective. Assembly is also very convenient and quick. Add firewood and ignite. Try the bottom and entrance baffle. You can control the size of the fire. The effect looks pretty good. Everyone so perfect. Such a creative invention, using only 1 iron barrel to make a fierce fire stove. Once the finished product, everyone was amazed. Let's see how to make. First, prepare a barrel. Draw a mark on it. Then use a grinder to cut against the mark. While cutting, pay attention to safety. Do not be distracted to avoid injury to yourself. Then find a hollow right-angle iron pipe as a smoke exhaust pipe, slightly trimmed and polished. Then install it on. Then prepare cement and yellow clay. Add some water and mix well. Mix the concrete and lay it on the bottom of the barrel. Press it smoothly. Then continue to fill the soil mixture along the inner wall. When the soil is as high as the firewood inlet, then you can put in the ashfall steel frame. Then continue to lay the soil. Put a steel bar near the top of the firewood entrance. It is used to support the soil. Then install the smoke exhaust pipe. Trim the position of the stove mouth. The whole process is complete. Finally, use a towel to wipe the exterior of the barrel clean. Put it all together to dry. We can see that this wood-burning stove is very small. Can also be placed elsewhere at any time. Very light and practical. So practical oven. Use the extra iron barrels and porcelain steel at home to create a multifunctional oven. The finished product is a shock. Next, I'll share the production process. Share with you. First, prepare a good porcelain steel. Clean it well. Then make a mark on the bottom with a pot lid. Cut out large round holes. Be sure to pay attention to the strength and technique. Avoid damage. Then use an angle grinder in the porcelain steel pot mouth edge position to cut out a few small slits. These 4 slits are used to place the roast meat place. You can also cut a few more. Then you can put more meat skewers. Find a metal bucket. Use a half-round paper block on the side to draw a pattern. This is the location of the ash opening under the grill. Then use the sander to cut the lines. Then prepare the cement and yellow clay. Pour in a little water and mix well. After grasping well, apply the clay to the bottom and edges of the barrel. This will achieve a long-lasting insulation. It can also prevent the effect of cracking. Place 8 steel bars inside to make the ash leak for the fireplace. Then use a little water. Smooth the yellow clay inside the fireplace. After drying, the whole interior looks flat and beautiful. The process of making the oven is almost complete. Next, we put some black charcoal in the oven. Set it on fire. Then put the modified porcelain jar on the top. An oven that can roast meat. Cooking oven is now complete. After we roast the meat, remove the porcelain when you can cook vegetables and boil water. Very practical and convenient. Operation is also very simple. If you like it, please like to follow, share interesting invention. Brainstorming. The guy cut an oil drum and transformed it. Surprisingly turned into a large firepower mobile wood stove. The function is also a lot of barbecue, and cooking can be all kinds of things. Cold weather can also be used as a grill. This is really a good invention. The following small will share the production process to your friends. First, prepare a large oil drum. Cut it in the bottom third. Then cut a 18 centimeters high, 28 cm wide mouth. Then cut off the iron to make a switch door. Then install the 2 handles. Easy to move. stove. Then cut 4 aluminum tubes to weld them together. For welding place to install a few movable wheels. The base of the wood stove is complete. Then fix the oil drum on the chassis. Next is to add some cement mortar and smooth it out. In order not to lose the temperature inside the stove too fast, we need to place red bricks on the bottom and around. After finishing, apply cement evenly on the surrounding red bricks. The next step is to cut a round steel plate. Weld on the handle and exhaust pipe. Then place it on the finished stovetop. Look at the oil drum mobile multifunctional wood burning stove is successfully transformed. Isn't it very good? Then put in the dry firewood. After the firewood is completely burned, we put a wire frame can grill some food. Put on the production of round steel plate. Then you can cook rice and boil vegetables and soup. Such a wood stove is multifunctional and can be moved. It's really convenient and practical. This guy is really a genius. He actually used the discarded iron pot at home to transform it into a wood-burning stove. The fire is very powerful. After cooking food can also be grilled. Simply too good. Now share the production process with you. First, find a discarded iron pot. Use the model to draw the mark. Cut out the entrance to the wood and ash opening. Then use a whetstone to polish smooth and wipe clean. Next is sprayed with anti-rust paint to prevent rusting. Then prepare 4 wheels mounted on the bottom. After spraying paint looks like a new one. Then fill in a layer of cement and smooth. Put in foam and 2 red bricks. Then add a few rebar bars. The gap between the bars can play a role of dust. Then put 2 pieces of foam at the entrance of the material. Put in a plastic bucket to make a shape. Fill the surrounding with cement. After the cement is completely dry, we remove all the plastic buckets and foam. A simple and practical wood-burning stove. And now it's a success. Very small and light. It doesn't take up much space in the house. The charcoal left after burning food can also be used for barbecue. Simply great. If you like it, please like to follow us. It's incredible. This multifunctional smokeless portable fireplace. It can be made with just a few sections of square pipe. It is small and beautiful, easy to carry. It can be used both indoors and outdoors. Don't look at its small size, but the firepower is very strong. Barbecue, cooking, boiling water and heating can do everything. Due to the unique design of the combustion chamber, no need to fan the wind. The fire can be very strong, greatly reduces cooking time, reduces the amount of fuel used, the smoke that is not completely burned. Burning again at high temperatures when exposed to oxygen make the combustion more fully, so there is no smoke at all. Winter in the indoor fire while grilling. Today I'll share the production process with you. First of all, bring 3 sections of 100 mm diameter square pipe. Sand the cut surface smooth. On one of the square tube, cut out an L-shaped notch. Make a square hole at the other end. Weld a box on it. Make it look like this. Make a round hole in the other square tube. Weld a piece of round steel pipe on it. Weld the 3 square tubes with open holes together. The internal holes must be aligned. Make them form a whole combustion chamber. Weld one end of the square tube with a small piece of cut steel. Be sure to weld carefully. Make sure the square tube is sealed. After welding, polish the outside welding points smoothly. Weld 2 clips on both sides of the square tube. Put the finished cover on it. Then you can seal the hole on the other side of the square tube. Punch a round hole in the cover plate. Weld the air inlet adjustment valve in the location of the open hole. This valve can be bought in general hardware stores. Weld a handle on the valve. Easy to adjust the air intake. Open a rectangular opening on the side of the square tube. Take a pre-made metal frame. Weld half of the frame to the square pipe opening. The other half is fixed with a flap. Can be easily opened and closed. Use a useless chain and a small piece of iron. Make a fire pole. Fold a steel plate into a concave shape welded to the square tube. Fold another L-shaped steel plate. Weld the handle to the top. Make this multifunctional storage compartment like a drawer, used for storage and baking food. Weld 2 foldable oven legs on the bottom of the square tube. Weld the L-shaped angle iron to the edge of the steel plate. Weld a pin box on the oven body. This way you can put the steel plate together on the body of the stove. To increase the area of use, put a steel plate on each side of the furnace body. This will give you more space to use. Weld 2 handles on both sides of the stove. Easy to move later. Weld a steel mesh on one end of a square tube with wire. Make a wood pellet burning box. Here the whole stove is formed. Spray the outside of the stove with fireproof paint. Further enhance its appearance. Put some parts into the storage compartment. You can see the storage function of this stove. Very powerful. 2 burners, 2 table racks, and the exhaust pipe can be easily put in. The whole stove is very compact. Doesn't take up much space at all. Pick it up and go. You can use wood pellets for fuel. You can also use firewood directly. The firepower is very high. Cooking and heating is no problem. This stove also uses the principle of secondary combustion, using the chimney effect to pump air into the inner stove. Continuous circulation, so it has more firepower than the ordinary wood stove. Burning more fully. No firewood and almost no smoke. What do you think? Welcome to discuss in the comments section. If you like it, please like it and bookmark it. Share interesting small inventions every day. See you next